Hi everyone, it's Anthony and Rachel.
Hello.
From Don't Crop Me Now. A bit of a break from the norm. Rachel is behind the camera. Rachel's been unwell, she's had sciatica for about 3 weeks, so we're a little bit behind with our planting and growing down on the allotment. We're going to do a little tour today to see where we're up to. It is the bank holiday Monday at the end of May. It's 21 degrees at the moment and probably going to get a little bit warmer. It's been very hot in Manchester in the UK. For about the last 14 days we've not really had any rain, and the current weather forecast says no rain for at least another 10 days. Let's have a look around. I'm currently on plot 4. Frequent viewers will know that this is our long-standing plot. We've been on this one for the best part of nearly 20 years. Let's have a look where we are on here. So just in front of me we've got some hanging baskets that have been planted up. They're protected by some nettings from the absolute terrors that are the magpies. I'm sure we'll see one of those knocking about or hear them in the background. Just off to my right we have some seeding parsnips, and we made a bit of a mistake with the parsnips. We let them go to seed intentionally, but what we did do was we put our carrot frame around them, and now the parsnips have gone to seed and they're very tall. They're about 7 feet tall. The problem we've got is that means we can't get our carrot frame off them easily until those parsnips have dried out and we've collected the seed. So what's that going to mean? It's going to mean we're going to have to find a new way to protect our carrots. Moving towards the centre of plot 4, this is a bit of a flower area. So in front of me on my right we have a little lavender hedge. Smells absolutely amazing at the moment. And just here on the left we did have a full lavender border just there, but these 3 plants did die, so they were taken out. We thought that one was dead, but it seems to have recovered, so what we'll do is some of that dead wood at the front we will trim out and tidy that one up, and we'll leave that one as it is. That's fine. This strawberry bed is doing really well. This was a variety of strawberry we got from a fellow plot holder that had really nice pink flowers. The strawberries were still the same, but it just had really nice pink flowers. Really strange, because even though they were all taken from the same runners, if you look at that strawberry bed, there's only one plant with a pink flower. All the others have gone white. Kind of odd, not sure why. And then behind me we have our dahlia frame. So this was mentioned in the previous video. This is literally just a frame made of a lot of old broom handles to support the dahlia plants as they grow, because they will grow up through here and they'll be at least this high, and this just stops them basically falling all over the path. On my left we have our rhubarb bed. This is very well established. It's been here years. To be honest, it needs a good knocking back in the winter, probably this year, where we'll take a good section off the outside to reduce the size and encourage the crowns to grow. And just on my right, next to the rhubarb, we have our peas. Now these are protected by Fort Knox. All this wire frame is to protect the peas from the magpies. Now the peas are starting to come into flower, so we will be getting some little pea pods starting to appear soon. But what we need to do before all the little pea tendrils tie themselves nicely into this metal frame, which will make this incredibly difficult to remove without damaging the plants, we will need to remove these frames. And these frames will be used somewhere else as anti-magpie protection. And moving on, I'm now in our asparagus cage. Now the asparagus cage was built not because of the magpies for once, this was built because of the cats. We had an issue last season where a couple of the neighbourhood cats seemed to have developed a liking for chewing asparagus stalks, which wasn't great, so we stuck a cage around it. It's only a cheap one, not as good as our fruit cage over on the other plot, but it does the job. So you can see that this asparagus is getting quite tall now. That means most of these ones are starting to go to seed. That's not a problem, that's part of the natural process of asparagus growing. We've got some decent big spears here, and there's a good one coming up on the ground down there, so it's not too bad. But it's not all good news, because if we look at this plant we can see that we've got asparagus beetle. Now these little asparagus beetles, they crawl around the plants and they lay eggs. Now I did spot one a minute ago and there it is, so I'll just put my hand behind that so you can hopefully see the little eggs just hanging down off that branch there, and they lay the eggs on the plant. And if you get a really bad infestation, then these things will burrow their way eventually down into the roots and they'll kill your plant. In terms of how do we get rid of them, basically you just come in here and start squishing them. Rachel has been doing that, but yes, we can see there's quite a few crawling around on here, so there's probably a little bit of a squish-a-thon needed to get rid of some of these. And here on this A-frame we have some beans. Now the two varieties in here are pea bean and Allotment. We're not growing as many beans as we normally do. If you look at previous videos, similar time of year, you'll see there's loads of bean wigwams everywhere. We are not growing as many. We have a full kitchen cupboard of dried beans from the previous 2 seasons. So we've decided this season there's going to be a lot less. There's just going to be this A-frame, 3 wigwams over there, which we'll get to in a minute, and some dwarf beans down at the end, which are due to go out very soon. In the middle, we have our little trellis, and on each side here, behind the bread crates, we've got some sweet peas. Again, the bread crates are magpie protection. I know I'm making the magpies out to be a complete nightmare. They kind of are. Previous seasons it's been pigeons. This year it's magpies. We can come down and you can get to the allotment. You can walk up and like 20 magpies will just go poof out of everywhere. It's crazy. Ironically, they've all gone a bit quiet at the moment, but they're usually all over the place. I'm sure we'll find some. And these are our spring cabbages. So these have been uncovered fairly recently. You can see that they're starting to go to seed, they're starting to go to flower. The leaves on these are still going to be okay for eating, so we will harvest these probably within the next week, and they will be going in the freezer. The flowers on these, the insects love them. There's bees pinging around in there already. So I'm stood at a couple of our onion beds. This onion bed here, the onions are a little bit bigger and the nets have been removed. The netting was on there to protect the onions from the magpies, but what you can see is that the leaves on the plants have basically gone like that. That is because as the plant was growing, the leaf has hit an obstruction and has just stopped and changed direction. It's not going to be a problem for these plants. Once they start getting some new leaves, the new leaves will grow and they will go straight up and they will be absolutely fine. We're going to get exactly the same issue over there on the shallots, because again there's a net. Now shallots are a lower and smaller plant, but they will still get the same thing. If we have a look at that, you can see that some of the leaves have started to hit the net and they've done the same thing. They've gone up and they've gone off at a right angle. Moving on to the potatoes. So as you can see, we grow our potatoes in 30-litre plastic tubs. It works incredibly well and the yields are generally pretty good. The reason these are netted is because on the top of each tub we have a layer of like hemp horse bedding. It's good weed suppressant and it helps maintain moisture within the tub. Once again, the magpies developed a lovely habit of digging in there. They didn't remove the potato plants, but they just enjoyed digging and kicking mess everywhere. So these were all covered, but as you can see from this growth, these nets are going to come off in the next week or so. So as we move towards the front of plot 4, we've just got some wigwams here for beans, 2 waiting to be planted out. This one over here is called chestnut bean. We were given to this by a fellow plot holder, Neil. We're going to see what those are like this year. And then just over here we have some rootstock. So this is going to be for our apple grafting project, which will be starting possibly winter or early next season. And our final stop on plot 4 is at the front, the flower border. This is looking really good. The summer bulbs are starting to come through, as are the summer plants. The spring bulbs have all slowly started to die off and it's looking really quite nice and starting to fill out. And now we are on plot 5B. This is a half plot, and as you can see we have a very well established strawberry bed. That's doing quite well. There's definitely some fruits forming on there. There's no ripe ones yet. We have seen fellow plot holders who've got some ripe strawberries, but we've got none just yet. Just under the fruit trees we have lots and lots of cuttings that have been potted on. It's great under these trees and in the cold frames as well, because you know they're protected by the trees. They get a nice bit of shade, but they still get plenty of sunlight. And on the rest of 5B, you can see where we're up to. It's not planted up yet. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beds awaiting planting. Well, 6 if we count this one. So we've got 6 beds due to be planted up. This one has got some leftover kale in that's going to seed. That's fine. The bees will love the flowers. Just at the end there we can see the cold frames. They're large, mostly empty. because everything's been potted on into the pots you can see under the fruit trees. The beans under the netting is a variety called Hoppy Black. That's one of our favourite beans. We really do like that one. It's very versatile and it's very nice. And just here in front of me we have our onion bed. This one's been in pretty much the longest. Now this was netted like the onions you saw over on plot 4. You can see if we look at some of the leaves on those that they were bent at 90 degrees, and we can also see that the new growth is growing straight up. So it's proof that these onions over there on plot 4 are going to recover very well. And I'm now in the greenhouse at the back of plot 5B. Because Rachel hasn't been so well, what we've done is we've mostly potted up a lot of things into slightly larger pots, and they've stayed in the greenhouse ready to be planted out in the coming weeks. So as you can see down here, it's a lot of brassicas, so there's going to be a lot of brassicas going out. There's some beans, and on this side we have some multi-sown leeks. And just in case you were wondering what the second greenhouse was at the back of plot 5, this belongs to plot 5A for the community plot. Because we've planted a mixture of things between the two greenhouses, there are some of our items in here that will go on 5B, but the majority of the things in here are for the community plot up at the front on 5A. And now we're on plot 2B, which is our fruit plot and the polytunnel. So inside the polytunnel we have our apricot tree. This is doing really well. There's a good few fruits on there and some of them are looking quite good. Now it is the first year that this has fruited, so we're not really sure how well it's going to do, but so far first impressions it's looking promising. Just down here to my right we have some potato tubs. These were potatoes that we didn't harvest last season, so we just left them to grow, and we have had a small harvest of some small new potatoes from these, and we've got 2 tubs of those remaining. And then just behind me we've got a couple of hanging baskets which are a variety of strawberry. This is the mini orchard part of the fruit plot on 2B. So we have an apple tree here, have an apple tree there with some fruit setting. This is a pear tree behind me. The fig tree, this fig tree does really well, and we have to give it a savage pruning every winter because it just goes really tall, but the fruit on there is doing really well. We have another small fig tree in a tub just down there, that's doing fairly well. And then over here, just on this side of the apple tree, we have some comfrey. Now comfrey is quite a deep rooted plant. We have the comfrey because we chop the leaves down, chuck it either in like a water butt with a lid to produce like a plant feed, or we throw the leaves on the compost heap as a green material. This comfrey is quite big, so this does need to come down pretty soon because that'll improve the airflow throughout this fruit tree. And just behind me we have the cherry tree. Now I'm 6 feet tall, and you can see how much taller than me this cherry tree is. Cherry trees grow very quickly and they are very difficult to control and sort of maintain a decent shape and keep the size sensible. So what is our plan for this cherry tree? Well, it does look very nice when it's in blossom, and if we're very lucky we might even get some fruit. The birds do tend to come down and demolish all the cherries. There's a short window between the cherries being spot on ripe and being harvestable and the birds not eating the whole lot. That's quite a small window. The plan for this tree is we're going to cut it down at the end of the season at about the same height as the big IBC water butt behind it, and graft on some other fruit that we can sort of grow around the tank to sort of hide the water collection. So moving into the fruit cage, so this was a brilliant purchase to protect all our soft fruits. Moving into the fruit cage we have a blueberry plant. Now this is 8+ years old, to give you an idea of how slow they grow. The blueberry plants generally are in 100 litre or 70 litre pots, and they're in ericaceous compost. That's because the blueberry plant is an acid loving plant, likes an acid based soil. Yep, you can see these are doing quite well. There's lots of little berries starting to set on these blueberry plants. And then just behind the blueberries in this bed, so we've got blueberries there, and then in this tub we've got a gooseberry. So that there's some gooseberry fruits starting to set. They're looking quite good. And then just behind the gooseberry and a lot taller, so we've trimmed this bush in such a way that it's higher. So we've got the gooseberry as a low plant, and then a bit higher up in the sort of canopy layer of plants, we've got a black currant. And then just to my left, as we come into the fruit cage, we have another gooseberry in this tub. This one seems to have decided that it really wants to grow on the very, very edge of the tub as opposed to being in the middle, but we'll deal with that as and when. So we've moved a little bit further into the fruit cage now, and on my left here we have a plum tree. Unfortunately, I can't remember, or we don't know the variety of this plum tree. It was a present and the labels fell off, so we don't know what variety this plum tree is. But if you look at it, you can see that we've got a load of canes in there. We're basically training this tree into a fan style shape on one side of the fruit cage. And for the first time this year, it's actually started to set some fruits, so that's quite promising. On the subject of plums, behind me here we have our Victoria plum. Now, I think it was last season where we had a very late frost and a real cold snap, and all the blossoms got whacked off the tree and we got a rubbish harvest. We literally got like a handful of plums off this tree. Victoria plum is a very traditional British plum. You know, it's the one that you hear mentioned, and as you can see, there's a lot of fruit setting on this tree. It's doing really, really well. But with the positives, there's always a negative. There's quite a bit of sappy growth on this tree, so we've got some new growth here. And we can see as we get to the end of the branch, I'll just hold my hand up behind it for contrast, you can see we're getting a lot of problems with green fly. So we're probably going to come in here with the secateurs and just nip some of these branches off. And just before I move over to the gooseberries and the currants, which is the final part of the fruit cage, I really want to show you the strawberries that we have in these hanging baskets. Now, this is an alpine wild strawberry. The reason it's in a hanging basket is because we normally hang them up either in the polytunnel or under the pergola. The reason they're on the floor at the moment is because it just makes them easier to water. Now, these are a good variety of strawberry because they don't send out runners, and the fruits, as tiny as they are, they pack one hell of a punch in terms of flavour.